Hey guys, welcome back to Genealogy and Chronology. Today we will be discussing about the complete Edain genealogy of J.R.R. Tolkien's works. You can find this high resolution poster on my Reddit. My Patreon members are eligible to receive watermark-free .pdf files of this poster and also chance to vote for my next poster. I have made 5 other Middle-earth related videos based on Tolkien's writing. Consider checking them out after watching this video and also subscribing to my channel. Let's move on to today's topic. Men were first awakened by Eru in year 1 of Years of the Sun of First Age in Hildoreen. For the first 300 years, men wandered east of the Ered Luin and were not met by people from any other races. In these years, Morgoth befriended the newly awakened Edain and asked them to worship him. Most men complied and started worshipping Morgoth. Some of these men repented and started their journey towards the west. These were the ancestors of the Edain about whom we will be discussing today. The first house of Edain we will be looking at is the House of Beor. This house was named after Beor the Old because he lived for 93 years. Beor with his people crossed Ered Luin and entered Beleriand. Finrod Felagund was the first elf to meet the men. He soon became very close to the house of Beor. Beor the Old was succeeded by his son Baran. Baran was succeeded by Boron. The son of Boron was Boromir, and Finrod assigned the lordship of Ladros to Boromir. It is worth mentioning that Boromir's daughter Andreth and Finrod's brother Egnor loved each other deeply, but due to siege of Angband they never were able to reunite. Boromir was followed by Bregor as the chieftain of House of Beor and Lord of Ladros. Bregor was followed by Bregolas, who perished in Dagor Bragollach. He was succeeded by his brother Barahir. Barahir married his fourth cousin Emeldir, and they would become parents of Beren, the first Edain to marry an elven lady. Barahir had saved the life of Finrod in Dagor Bragollach. Finrod gave his ring to Barahir in gratitude, and this ring would become the heirloom of descendants of Barahir. Beren, son of Barahir, would fall in love with elven princess Luthien, but Luthien's father Thingol would disapprove of this. He asked Beren to steal a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown for him as a bride price, a task which was more or less impossible. But Beren and Luthien, with the help of Finrod, would be successful in retrieving the Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. Finrod would die in this quest for Silmaril, and Beren would lose his hand, and later he would lose his life in pursuit of the wolf which ate his hand and the Silmaril. Luthien would also pass away in grief of Beren's death. They both would be reincarnated to live a mortal life in Tol Galen. They were blessed with a son named Dior Eluchil. He was the heir of Thingol. Thingol perished in the battle against dwarfs in 502 of First Age, and Beren and Luthien passed away in 503 of First Age. Thus, Dior became king of Doriath, but that was short-lived. Sons of Fëanor would sack Doriath in Second Kinslaying, and both Dior and his wife Nimloth would be killed. Dior and Nimloth had a daughter named Elwing, who was saved by those loyal to the king, along with the Silmaril. We will discuss more about her in the later part of the video. The second house of Edain was the House of Haleth. The men of this house crossed Ered Luin in 312 of First Age. They were led by Haldad, but he was slain in 375 of First Age in an orc attack. His daughter Haleth assumed the leadership since her brother Haldar was also slain. She led her people and defended her lands until a relief force from Caranthir, son of Fëanor, saved them. She declined the offer of Caranthir over lordship of some of his lands, and she later led her people to the forest of Brethil, which was given to her by Thingol on the condition to keep the servants of enemy at bay. She never married and hence had no children, and thus was succeeded by her nephew Haldan. Haldan was succeeded by Halmir. Halmir was succeeded by Haldir. Haldir married to the daughter of Hador, Lord of Dorlomin. Haldir's elder sister Hareth married to Gordor, future Lord of Dorlomin, son of Hedor. Haldir was succeeded by Handir, who married Bildis, granddaughter of Pregor, Lord of Ladros. His son was Brandir the Lame. He was killed by Turin, son of Hurin. Thus Haredang from a junior branch became chieftain of House of Haleth. He was also slain by the people of Brethil in Kinstrife when Hurin returned to Efil Brandir after being released by Morgoth. After the Kinstrife within the House of Haleth, all descendants of Haldad were dead. Hence Avrank was chosen as the chieftain, who was son of Dorlas. Not much about his ancestry is known except that he was a Haladin. The population of Haladin dwindled as time progressed. Now coming to the last house of Edain, House of Hedor. They crossed Eret Luin in 313 of First Age. This house was led by Marach and the house was named House of Marach initially. Marach was succeeded by Malach. Adenal, daughter of Malach, married into House of Beor. Malach was succeeded by Megor. Megor was succeeded by Hethol. The son of Hethol was Hedor. He was assigned the lordship of Dorlomin in 416 of First Age. Gundor, son of Hedor, perished in Dagger Bragola. His other children, Glorthel and Galdor, married the children of Halmir, chieftain of House of Haleth. Galdor succeeded Hedor and he was succeeded by the famous Hurin. Hurin had a brother named Huor. Both Hurin and Huor married into the House of Beor. Hurin married Morwen, daughter of Baragund, and Huor married Rian, daughter of Belagund. Baragund and Belagund were sons of Bregolas, chieftain of House of Beor. Thus Morwen and Rian were first cousins. Hurin was captured by Morgoth in Nirnaeth Arnodiath. Hurin refused to reveal the location of Gondolin to Morgoth, despite much torture. Thus Morgoth cursed Hurin and his children. Hurin had a son named Turin and daughter named Urwen, but Urwen died at age 3. Few days after Hurin was captured in Nirnaeth Arnodiath, Hurin's second daughter, Ninor, was born. When Ninor was born, Turin was living in Doriath. Thingol insisted Morwen and Ninor to come to Doriath, but Morwen refused and stayed in Dorlomin. Turin left Doriath in search of his father, and soon Morwen and Ninor would go to Doriath in search of Turin. Upon learning that Turin left Doriath, Morwen intended to find Turin, and she too left Doriath in search of her son. Ninor too secretly left Doriath along with the company of elves sent by Thingol to keep Morwen safe. Ninor would be separated from the elven company she was traveling with, and she climbs Amon Ithir where she finds dragon Glorong. Upon learning that she was daughter of Hurin, the dragon enchanted Ninor, and this made Ninor forget everything including her identity, past and family. She was found by the elven company with whom she started her journey, but she later fled from the elves when they were attacked by orcs. Ninor ran into forest alone until she was lost and she eventually fainted. She was found by none other than Turin, her brother, whom she had never met. Turin found his sister at the grave of Finduilas, sister of Gil-galad. Finduilas had loved Turin, but Turin did not show any affection towards her. Finduilas was slain by orcs because Turin decided to go to Hithlum to search for his kin instead of protecting her. Brandir, 7th chieftain of House of Haleth, fell in love with Ninor and he tended her from her sickness. But Ninor loved Turin. Thus Turin and Ninor were wedded 3 years after Turin found his sister. Turin would set out to slay dragon Glorong, and in the combat, Turin mortally wounded the dragon before himself collapsing. Ninor, worrying for her husband's safety, came to Turin and saw him beside Glorong in the swoon of dragon's blood. Before Glorong died, he told Ninor of her true identity and removed his enchantment from her. Realizing that she married her own brother and that she was carrying her brother's child inside her, Ninor ran away and threw herself into the gorge of Kabed en Aras. When Turin awoke, Brandir told Turin of Ninor's death and her parentage. Turin refused what Brandir had said and killed him. When Malbang came from Doriath and said Turin of the real identity of Ninor, Turin killed himself finally with his own sword. Hurin would be released by Morgoth after the death of all his children and he would finally meet his wife, who too would die the day she met Hurin. Hurin would bury his wife beside his children's grave and he would go to Efil Brandir, and he would cause a kinstrife between the people of House of Haleth. He would later find the dwarf Mim who had earlier betrayed his son Turin. Húrin slew Mim and took the dwarven necklace of Noglamir and took it to Doriath and gave it to Thingol for aiding his son. After learning everything from Melian about the intentions of Morgoth, Húrin left Doriath and committed suicide in 502 of First Age. Húrin's brother Huor died in Nirnaeth Arnodiath and his son Tuor was born the same year when he died. His wife Rian also passed away in grief of Tuor's death the next year. Tuor was fostered all his childhood by the elves of Mithrim. Upon reaching adulthood, he was guided by Ulmo to the secret city of Gondolin to warn Turgon about Morgoth's plan to sack Gondolin. Turgon did not heed the warnings of Ulmo brought by Tuor, but Turgon liked Tuor and Tuor rose swiftly in the favor of the king. Tuor loved Idril, daughter of Turgon, and heir to the throne of Gondolin. Turgon did not stop Idril and thus, with his blessings, both were married in 502 of First Age. Tuor was made the lord of the House of the Wing. Tuor and Idril were blessed with one son, Eärendil the Half-Elven. Gondolin would be sacked by the forces of Morgoth thanks to the treachery of Meglin, king's nephew, who hated Tuor and wanted to marry Idril. Turgon would be slain with much of the population of Gondolin, but Idril, Tuor and their son would escape thanks to Elven Lord Glorfindel, who gave his life to defend the heirs of Turgon. Tuor and Idril would settle in Heavens of Sirion. When Eärendil was 22 years old, Tuor and Idril sailed to Valinor, and Tuor would become the only Edain to be accounted as an elf. Eärendil would marry Elwing the Half-Elven. She descended from the house of Beor and she was daughter of Dior and Nimloth. Eärendil and Elwing would give birth to twins Elros and Elrond. In Third Kinslaying, Heavens of Sirion would be destroyed and Elwing would flee with the Silmaril, casting herself into the sea, only to be saved by Ulmo, who would take her to Eärendil. They both would go to Valinor and plead to the Valar to overthrow Morgoth once and for all. Elros and Elrond would be fostered by Maedhros. After War of Wrath, Elros, who chose to be a mortal man, was given the island realm of Numenor to rule, where he took most of the remaining Edain. Elrond would become herald to High King Gil-galad. Numenor would thrive for 3000 years and later meet its downfall. Elendil, descendant of Elros, would establish Arnor and Gondor with his sons. From them we get the chieftains of Dunedain and lastly Aragorn II, King Elessar, who married Elrond's daughter Arwen. I have discussed in detail all the royal houses that you see on this poster in my other videos, which you can find on my channel. All my posters are freely available on Reddit. I hope you all like this video. If you like my work, please consider supporting me on Patreon. All Patreon members get soft copies of 2 watermark-free high-resolution PDF files each month, plus an option to vote for my next poster. Consider subscribing as we will be discussing about the Stewards of Gondor in our next video. Thank you.